We can go to Venezuela. There's a lot actually going on there. Let's go and put D1 up here on the screen. This is important from Secretary Marco Rubio. There had been a lull currently in Venezuela, and just from what I know, here's what I can share. Rubio is still hell-bent on regime change. Now, what he did very recently was smart on his plan to try and do this, because Trump has shifted current strikes away from the Caribbean and to the Eastern Pacific. What he has done is they are now going to designate the so-called Cartel de los Solos as a foreign terrorist organization, headed, as he says, by the illegitimate Nicolas Maduro. The group has corrupted the institutions of the Venezuelan government, is responsible for terrorist violence conducted by and with other designated FTOs for trucking drugs in the United States and with Europe. This is an important legal designation for potential strikes on the regime itself because of a 2020 indictment which alleges that Maduro is the head of Cartel de los Solos. So by designating it a FTO, it gives them the potential legal authority to strike Maduro himself and to have regime change. Now, at the same time, let's be clear, while Rubio and all of them are pushing this, Trump is also being presented with overtures from Maduro, who wants to negotiate with him. And here's what he said whenever he was confronted about potential talks with Maduro just yesterday in the Oval Office. Let's take a listen.
In these talks with Maduro, is there anything that he could say or do that would allow you to feel like he could stay with your support? Is there anything that he could say that you would be, okay, you can stay with me?
It's hard to say that. You know, the question's a little bit tricky. I don't think it was meant to be tricky. It's just that, look, he's done tremendous damage to our country, primarily because of drugs, but really because we have that problem with other countries too. But more than any other country, the release of prisoners into our country has been a disaster. He's emptied his jails. Others have done that also. He has not been good to the United States. So we'll see what happens. At a certain period of time, I'll be talking to him.
So he's like, well, you know, maybe you will talk to him. Maduro's done tremendous damage, but I will be talking to him. Trump, at this point, is completely torn, and this is the product of this is the Rubio problem that I've been flagging from the beginning, because he is the national security advisor and he's a secretary of state, which means he totally controls the interagency process and the stuff that gets to Trump and the president's desk in terms of the level of options. There's never been before that level of control, except for Henry Kissinger under Richard Nixon and with Gerald Ford, and Ford eventually is fed up with that. Now, the reason why this is important is that Maduro, there is a lot of stuff from behind the scenes who has tried to make overtures to Trump in the first place, who Maduro doesn't trust Rubio to relay any of his messages. So he has to try and go through outside channels. Yeah, he's totally right to do that.
Yeah.
But what he's trying to do is go through outside channels to reach Donald Trump. Now, they have this interlocutor with Rick Grenell, who I believe is one of the best members of the administration. But the problem is that with the interagency warfare, you just never know how this is all going to play out and Trump's own mind. At the end of the day, the most convincing argument that's been made to Trump is that, guys, you don't have a plan and this is going to be just like Libya. But with every step that moves forward, from the FTO designation to the strikes and more, eventually your hand may be forced. And who knows what Maduro is going to do? Let's give the guy, I'm not a Maduro fan, just everybody knows, but we can rationally view. He's got, you know, the biggest military force in the Caribbean since fucking Cuban Missile Crisis out there. They've got strikes in the Caribbean. You got the U.S. government with a bounty on your head. I mean, a less rational person would go berserk and would declare war. He's not doing that because he just wants to survive. He doesn't care about Russia. He doesn't care about China. He wants to sell us oil and gold and just tell us to go away. Like, at the end of the day, he wants to die in his own bed, rich, happy, and unafraid. That's what North Korea wants. That's what most of these people that we're told are so spooky and horrible want. They're just pretty rational actors at the end of the day. So when it comes to negotiation, the deal on the table is a good one. He's willing to sell us a shit ton of oil and gold and minerals, and specifically to deprioritize Russia and China if that's what we want. Why would we not take that? But Trump has got all this stuff in his ear from Rubio and others, and they're making all kinds of BS arguments. The latest one is that if we overthrow Maduro, then the new government will be even more friendly to us on terms of oil and of gold, which makes no sense. Because why would you have to overthrow somebody when you got a good deal already that's on the
guy
table?
Who already wants to work with you.
So, at this point, the Venezuelan population, this is the other thing I've learned in terms, everyone's like, you're a Maduro simp or whatever. I'm not saying he's popular, but in this instance, any leader, like let's say Maria Machado, who's being directly propped up by the United States of America and is seen as endorsing strikes on her own countrymen, what legitimate what legitimate power are you going to have with those people?
She's going to be loved.
Exactly. They're going to say you're a tool.
As a liberator.
Right. You're a tool of the United States. And yeah, I don't like Maduro, but I don't want some CIA-backed, literally USAID, leader to come in and to usurp my country. There's elements of nationalism here, which are very important. The dynamics are still very scary and they're very dangerous. So things are not good right now.
Well, let's check in with the New York Times opinion section
let's check in.
to see what sort of rational analysis they're offering there. This is the next element. We've got a real banger here from Brett Stevens, the case for overthrowing Maduro. Let me just read you a portion of this just to show you how stupid it is. So his first argument he makes is, he says, let's take it point by point. Is there a vital American interest at stake? And he says, there is. And it's not just the one the administration keeps talking about, drugs, which we've talked a lot about how they are not actually a significant contributor in terms of the drug problem we have in the US. But he goes on to say, the larger challenge posed by Maduro's regime is that it is both an importer and exporter of instability. An importer because the regime's close economic and strategic ties to China, Russia, and Iran give America's enemies a significant foothold in the Americas, one that Tehran reportedly could use for the production of kamikaze drones. So we've got the whole axis of evil type language. Ooh, the bad guys like them, so we can't have that. An exporter because the regime's catastrophic misgovernance has generated a mass exodus of refugees and migrants, nearly 8 million so far, with ruinous results around the hemisphere. Both trends will continue for as long as the regime remains in power. Now, you might also add that the sanctions that this administration and others have levied against this regime have also contributed to that economic collapse and migration. You might also ask yourself the question, well, what happens if this administration, the Maduro administration, falls, and then you think that's just going to be, pretty innate, and then everyone's going to want to stay at home in Venezuela? The much more likely outcome is Libya. The much more likely outcome is that you have effectively a failed state where things get even more catastrophically violent, unstable, economically disastrous, and you have even more people who leave their own home country, which is a very difficult thing for those individuals and obviously destabilizing for the countries in the region, and something that, Republicans have been very against, accepting any of these migrants who come to our borders, at least under the Trump administration 2.0. So just completely idiotic. He doesn't think through at all. Okay, so what happens if we do intervene and we take out Maduro? How is that going to go for people? Based on our extensive experience just over the past, let's say, 20 years in how that has gone when we've gone in and tried to do a regime change operation. You tell me, has that led to peace and stability? Has that led to a lessening of chaos? In every single instance, the answer is absolutely not. It's been complete and utter disaster, first and foremost, for the people of those countries.
Yeah, I mean, look, the arguments fall apart on any basic scrutiny, but they still exist. That's part of the problem. I mean, put the next one, please, up on the screen. We still have an immense amount of military assets which are in Venezuela. All of these, are potential strikes. You've got the aircraft carrier that just came on its way. You've got multiple U.S. warships. You've got drones and planes flying around in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific, just striking random boats. They've got the legal justification that you're talking about. Let's go to D6 or D5, please, just to show you all. Some military personnel are now seeking legal advice on whether these missions are even lawful. Apparently, all of this relies on some secret memo, which is inside of the White House counsel's office, where they've determined the legality of the strike. Just so, if you're too young to remember, this is what the Bush administration was like. And you can go watch. Yeah, you remember.
Yeah,
there's actually some great, what are they called? The Frontline documentary on PBS. If you guys are interested, you can go watch them on YouTube, I think. There are these great Frontline documentaries specifically about these secret memos, like with torture or warrantless spying with the NSA, where somebody, they go to some guy's hospital room to try and get him to reauthorize spying. And I mean, the drama of it all usually comes back to the fact that these military personnel were carrying out these strikes. You know what they're afraid of? They're like, yo, we could be prosecuted if somebody ever comes comes after us. And by the way, I don't think that they should be, because the people who are making the decisions and ordering them to, what are they supposed to do? They have no, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. The president and the SecDef is telling them to go do something. The SecDef and the president are the ones who are trying to cover themselves with all of these legal memos and then briefing them to Congress, but even Congress is not buying a lot of their BS on this issue.
Yeah.
So look, all of this, by the way, there was even supposed to be a dissent vote, remember? There was actually a war powers resolution potential dissent, which they barely won in the U.S. Senate. The only reason that they won is because the administration was leaking that actually they had backed off of military options when it came to Venezuela. But as you can see with the designation, they wanted to keep the optionality alive. And of course, that's where Congress just completely abdicates their responsibility too from the Senate. So the whole thing—
I don't know why you would trust these people at all.
It's bad.
Yeah. And on the service members seeking outside counsel, it's pretty interesting if you listen to or read this piece. They say it's mostly not the more junior level. It's mostly the higher level, because the junior level service members they trust the process. They're like, if they're telling me to do this, I'm sure it's gone through the proper channels. It must be lawful. Yeah. But the more senior people are like, I've been around the block. I don't trust these people. I've also, by the way, they dismissed a bunch of the JAG, the lawyers, internal lawyers that they thought would go against some of the more, aggressive and illegal things that they're doing. So they're the ones predominantly who are seeking this outside counsel. And to your point about those secret memos that they've used for the legal justification, I think it was the New York Times that did do some reporting on that. They were able to see those memos or learn about those memos. And what they found is that they rely not on the actual facts of, the realities of the drug trade and the minimal involvement, and lack of direct involvement of Maduro, whatever. They rely on the president and other administration officials' statements of their characterization of Maduro and drug trafficking. So they're not even using, their own analysis. They're using just the lies and the statements of Trump as their justification for these unbelievably insane actions. And last one, this is, I guess, maybe a little heartening. We'll put this up on the screen. Wasn't sure how the American people would feel if they would just buy the rhetoric, hook, line, and sinker of we're getting the bad guys, let's go. But only 29% of Americans support the U.S. military killing these, what they describe as drug suspects. Some of them may be, some of them may not be. We don't really know. We are offered no evidence of such thing. But you have a majority who oppose it and just 29% who say they actively support it, and the rest are unsure. So, gotta give some credit to the American people here that they're not buying all this bullshit.
No, they're not buying it, but it's one of those where does it matter at this point? If your own Congress basically abdicates responsibility, and then the administration is just making up shit, inside of whatever they. It's always, this is the scary part about the government that a lot of people don't remember. And forgive the tangent, but do you remember the Anwar al-Awlaki strike? Barack Obama and his White House were like, well, this guy's an American citizen. We want to kill him abroad. Well, technically, he needs due process. So they just invented this entire fake legal court where the executive branch technically gave him due process. And then the White House itself goes, yeah, we're allowed to kill him now. And then we killed him and we killed his son, as well as a bunch of other people in Yemen. They can just do whatever they want. You can truss it up if they want, but at the end of the day, when you start to really break all this stuff down, this is why who you elect, and not even just who you elect matters, but people need to remember where on foreign policy, we effectively have a king. And especially in the war on terror era, these congressmen, the reason why that they don't dissent from the administration is even if they don't trust them, if things go bad, they don't want their hands dirty, because Iraq took so many of these different congressmen out in the races. They never want to actually vote on anything foreign policy related in the event they could ever come back to bite them politically. Obviously, cowardice, but that's the unfortunate reality of where we are right now. Okay, let's move to property tax. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.